Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and this week might be ordinary. Shame it's not remotely better. And this, it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So I'll say it again, I think it's the closest thing to an ordinary week we've had on the Hot 100 for some time, and probably will be the last for the next month or more, because while it was a relatively stable week in terms of new arrivals and gains, the holiday music wave is already encroaching and will be overwhelming any new release, joy to the world, or something like that. Anyway, our top 10 for now. We're even in late November, Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift has a grip on the number one, albeit a shaky one, pretty much just sustained on the collapsing radio margins and just enough streaming. And given that the Hot 100 is near its weakest point right about now, especially with the radio, that's a bad sign for any longevity, which might explain that coming in for number 2, we got Lovin' on Me by Jack Harlow, with frankly ridiculous streaming and already a radio push. Now, I'm kinda shocked that society at large decided to give Jack Harlow another shot. Do folks remember that he put out a rap album this year that kind of dominated discourse for about a week before sinking completely? But again, we will get into this song later on. I got things to say. It was also enough to leapfrog Paint the Town Red by Doja Cat at number 3, where she also had a rough week on the radio and lost streaming, so she couldn't make up any of the gap. Then there's Snooze by SZA at number 4, also very much on the radio decline, but streaming actually propped up some of the losses, which allowed her to hold over Is It Over Now by Taylor Swift at number 5, which still has a lot of streams and is getting a radio run of its own, which for a vault track really caught me off guard. Then we got I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan featuring Casey Musgraves, very stable at number 6. Again, radio's not touching this, the streaming is just that good. You'd think that some of the stubborn idiots over at Music Row doing radio programming would capitalize on a good thing here, but I guess they're still occupied with Fast Car by Luke Combs at number 7, which is now very much on the decline. Now, this could open up a hole for another new entry in the top 10, Greedy by Tate McRae at number 8. And I'll give her credit that the radio and streaming seems to be behind this at the worst possible time to try to make a run in the holiday season with very dubious star power. Well, at least I'll take her bad Nelly Furtado impression over our last two here, which is basically Morgan Wallen switching places with himself, with Last Night at number 9, consistent streaming's gonna do that, and Thinking About Me at number 10, which is now firmly on the radio downswing. Now this takes us neatly to our losers and our dropouts, and we actually had a few notable ones this week, with Watermelon Moonshine by Lainey Wilson and Lady Gaga by Peso Pluma, Gabito Ballesteros, and Junior H. Now, I was originally sure that both were going to clinch year-end list spots for 2023, but since Billboard decided to ditch a sane tracking week for the benefit of their event planners for the Billboard Music Awards, which again, nobody cares about, predictions, they were a little muddy. Only Watermelon Moonshine made it for the year-end list, which actually dropped today. Anyways, the losers are predominantly from Taylor Swift again. Now That We Don't Talk at 33, Slut at 49, Say Don't Go at 53, Style at 69, Bad Blood at 80, Out of the Woods at 85, Wildest Dreams at 86, Suburban Legends at 92, and Blank Space at 93. Then we had some other residual album impact fading, like for Jungkook was Standing Next to You at 50 off the debut, 3D with Jack Harlow at 84, and 7 with Lotto at 91. Then we had Olivia Rodrigo have a pretty rough week with Bad Idea right at 54, which is probably going to get caught between years, thanks Billboard, and Can't Catch Me Now falling off the debut to 81. Finally, Cobra by Megan Thee Stallion took a steep hit to 63 off the debut. Perro Negro by Bad Bunny and Fide hit 67. Single Soon by Selena Gomez just never caught on at 77. And Now and Then by the Beatles crashed down to 76. I'm surprised I did not get that much backlash to my general dislike of the song, but hey, no real drama. I can't complain. Meanwhile, in our returns and gains, we've got two stories. The first being the returns of the holiday music back in earnest. A Holly Jolly Christmas by by Burl Ives at 44, Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helms at 38, Last Christmas by Wham at 32, and All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey back yet again at 17. Now the flip side of this story is what will have any chance of competing, and outside of Too Much by Kid Laroi, Jungkook, and Central C getting something of a radio push at 66, the story's probably going to be country radio here. Unfortunately, that's largely bad news. When Everything I Love by Morgan Wallen is one of the better ones at 59, that's a bad sign, as we got Truck Bed by Hardy at 64, Standing Room Only by Tim McGraw at 60, and Can't Have Mine by Dylan Scott at 57. I mean, thank God White Horse by Chris Stapleton surged to 12 off the album boost. Thank God it's at least gonna have a shot at 2024's year-end list, maybe, fingers crossed. But it also looks like it's caught between years thanks to Billboard being extremely stupid. Thanks again for that. Anyway, we got a reasonable list of new arrivals here, so let's start off with number 100, Soak City Do It by 310 Baby.
If you a freak, do your shit, don't run, don't do no running.
Okay, I got none. This is an artist I've never heard of before. He's based in LA, somehow got on a mustard beat. He's got a big remix featuring Tyga and Blueface, while having an album that I saw zero buzz around back from last June, but apparently this song went viral on TikTok, and okay, imagine someone with DaBaby's vocal tone, but having less energy and talent and can barely stay on beat alongside a piano line that is desperately trying to make up for how clumsy the bass and percussion mixing is, and all the clunky shifts trying to compensate for some really bad rapping. It almost makes up for how 310 Baby describes sex with him like a water park in perhaps the least interesting way possible. It's actually a little startling how his non-charisma cuts through here, cause he doesn't remotely make all the crude sex bars appealing or even funny. So yeah, this just sucks in a not particularly interesting way. Next, number 99, Better Than Ever by YoungBoy Never Broke Again and Rod Wave.
I drove that Rolls over Rari, got in it for better than ever.
It's probably a bad thing that the first thing I thought with this song title for these artists was, yeah, I don't believe that for a second from these two. But hey, it's a collab that kind of makes sense for that newest YoungBoy project that's not getting remotely the same attention. And it already starts on a weird note that Rod Wave is only contributing a verse and not the hook, which YoungBoy is attempting to croon over. This is very poor use of your Rod Wave right out of the gate, and when the song actually finally gets to his verse, he's just a much better fit with the hazy vocals and the pianos around the trap groove. He's just got a much better command for that soulful presence. But as for the content, a lot of formless complaining about women despite all the success that comes with flexing and doing drugs and finally being a bit more stable, which feels a bit more credible coming from Rod Wave, but it's kind of hard to buy with YoungBoy, seeing his history and behavior. Although honestly, while the paranoia and angst has been trimmed back, this is also very much to the formula for both acts. It doesn't feel special. It's not bad, not great either. Number 97, Different Round Here by Riley Green featuring Luke Combs.
Mamas are love. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Yeah, we're doing things a little different round here.
Oh god, I wish when I saw song titles like this it wouldn't raise all my suspicions. Thanks a lot, Jason Aldean. But Riley Green and Luke Combs both have pretty good instincts on a straightforward ode to small town living, albeit it's distinctly weird. We're getting it from this remix of a song from 2019, and the remix dropped 6 months ago. And the original song is fine, I guess. Broadly sketched, leaning on a lot of military sloganeering. The production's pretty organic, outside of some tinkling elements that feel louder than they should in the mix. So it actually caught me off guard how the remix feels a lot rougher in order to amplify more of that neo-traditional twang, but the guitar tones and drums wind up a lot muddier as a result. And somehow that piercing, tinkling tone, it's still cutting through. Outside of that, I mean, Luke Combs is a better singer than Riley Green. He brings a warmer presence to the song, but with the production taking a step back, I can't call this all that interesting or good, and I frankly expected more of both of them here. All I'm saying. Number 95, Smurk's Carter by Lil Durk.
With his people. Cursed, I mean, hurt that they just taking all my people.
Ain't be this case cause he ain't legal.
So a little context with this. This is a track from Lil Durk's Posse, Only the Family's collab tape that dropped recently. Since he's the biggest name, this is the crossover single, similar to how Hellcats and Trackhawks broke through in 2021, where from the album art, it looks, and it's even some of the production, it's trying to be an homage to Lil Wayne. That has to be the only reason why those painfully underweight synths that belonged left in 2008 wound up here, behind an otherwise pretty decent trap groove and liquid organ. And that's kind of a shame, because there is something to this content. The song opens up with a co-defendant of Lil Durk's father who got sent to jail for decades in the 90s and was only released somewhat recently as sentencing laws changed, and Lil Durk is reflecting on how easy it would have been for him to fall through into the exact same trap, chasing that money, selling drugs, especially now that he's making music about that life for those people. Now, I think the track kind of loses its way in the second verse where he's talking about sex, and he's not very good at it, and then ditching the girl who is literally paying his rent. But outside of that, okay, look, I've heard Lil Durk in this territory a lot before, and while the gunplay has probably been smartly turned down, I think I might have preferred if he went even further on the Lil Wayne homage with actual bars. As it is, just okay. Number 90, La 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 by Stray Kids. Well, this is only a matter of time. For those of you who don't know, Stray Kids are one of the other larger K-pop acts that have been looking to cross over to the US market and fill the boy band gap that BTS has left for the time, with their Korean and Japanese albums and EPs moving a lot of units the past couple of years, but their album 5-Star this year being their proper stateside breakthrough along through a deal through Republic. Now this translates to their newest EP, Rockstar, which spawned this song, and what you'll notice is that this is a group that leans on a much more bombastic, forceful tone, with all the percussion jumping between trap and rap rock, and the harsher vocals even including their singers, with a much gruffer, louder presence that I actually kind of like. But honestly, in attitude, they remind me more of Blackpink. Sharper and more grating synth choices, a bit of a compressed genre pileup, especially when it comes to the hip-hop elements that are trying to ramp up to this big hook, and lyrics that, okay, they're kind of underwhelming outside of just going for that rock bombast that really could have afforded to let those electric guitars erupt through or have any texture. That's probably my biggest issue with this. For as many ideas as they're trying to cram in, there's a lack of convincing crescendos or bombast that can pay it off, which leads to a song feeling very high energy and loud, but lacking an impact for me. The guys have charisma. I like the presence, but it's just okay. I'm not sold. At least not yet. Number 37, Northern Attitude by Noah Kahan and Hozier. I don't want to go off on my conspiracy theory again that ever since I gave a middling at best review to Stick Season, that Noah Kahan's been using his expected star power to force himself into my good graces. It's more likely he's just collabing with a lot of folks that we both happen to like. My taste is not that unique here. But after touring with Rustin Kelly and having collabs with Post Malone, Zach Bryan, Lizzie McAlpine, and Casey Musgraves, we now have a remix with Hozier of Northern Attitude, a song I originally neither liked nor disliked enough to mention at the time. Kind of a shame, because the anthemic acoustics that ramp into that hook, they are legit impressive, and Hozier stepping in to sing that second verse and provide some background for the hook, it's a natural step that is pretty effective. He basically blows Noah Kahan out of the water here, to the surprise of nobody. But it's always been the content that's irked me about this song, because the protagonist runs into a past lover who is a little bit more settled in her life, seems to be trying to make a pass at her, but then he deflects from it because it's his northern attitude. He was raised on Little Light. Dude, you're from Vermont. Speaking as a Canadian who grew up in the Midwest, get over yourself. And now that you got someone from Ireland on your song, it's fucking laughable. And the second verse always kind of annoyed me here too, because he's either talking to her and remarking upon how her life is going to be so stale and will inevitably collapse and end, or more likely he's being self-deprecating to a frankly ridiculous ridiculous degree. And thank God Hozier is here and at least has some of the gravitas to pull that off. So yeah, easily the weakest remix thus far, and while I appreciate Noah Kahan lending his platform to far better artists, his choice of material is starting to get kind of thin. All I'm saying. Number 11, Houdini by Dua Lipa.
You need me, I'm not here for long. Catch me or I go Houdini, I come and I go. Prove you got the right to please me, everybody knows. Catch me or I go Houdini.
Look, I don't know about you, but when I started hearing that Dua Lipa was starting a fresh album cycle, I was legit excited. I don't even love her albums that much since I covered her in the mid-2010s, but given how shaky mainstream pop has been, I had expectations that she would at least nab some strong hits, and thank God this is legit. Now, granted, the names that are more important to recognize here are Kevin Parker of Tame Impala fame, and Danny L. Harl, most well known for his association with PC Music, which is probably how they got that filthy bass line around the ramping percussion and that tight 80s analog synth gloss before we get the flat and snarl of the guitar on the outro. Sure, it's a very obvious deliberate throwback to early 80s pop, but we slipped away from new disco into something with a little bit more of an edge. That's a very welcome shift. And of course, Dua Lipa can pull this off, just command it. If anything, she's grown steadily into a subtly more expressive vocalist, especially with all the whispery backing vocals here, where some of the inflections almost remind me a little bit of Blondie. That's a big compliment. And I love that she's leaning into the effortless tease and the flirtatious nature of the song. And while I might need another dozen or so listens to see if I can put this among my absolute favorites from Dua Lipa, I'm not sure it's got the intensity of Physical or the spellbinding melodic hook of Love Again. This is probably one of her best produced songs to date, and I think it kicks a lot of ass. Great track. For the love of God, even if it's over the holidays, make this a hit. And finally, number 2, Lovin' on Me by Jack Harlow.
I'm still a baby. I get love in Detroit like Skilla, baby. And the thing about your boy is,
I guess I shouldn't be that surprised that Jack Harlow was getting another shot with a major industry push. Said industry spent way too much money on making him a thing to let him just flame out. Ergo, we've got this, which is set up to compete with Taylor Swift's Cruel Summer next week for the number 1. And, okay, I know I was in the minority among critics who kind of liked First Class despite the gaping flaws. I thought the song was smooth, the sample flipped worked way better than it should have. Whereas this song seems to be very obviously trying to play the same formula as First Class, and I think it's doing a lot worse. I actually don't mind the original Cadillac Dale song, Whatever Bass Soliloquy, a pretty solid R&B cut from the mid-90s, which they've sped up and frankly overused throughout the entire song to drive that sharper bass groove and the clattering old school percussion. But man alive, whatever sense of cool around Jack Harlow is just evaporated with this. Openly bragging about being vanilla in bed, that's something that happens in country songs, not here. And who decided spelling things should be his gimmick for both of his verses? The first being a flagrant riff on some of Drake's slang, which reminds me of Churchill Downs where Drake washed his ass, and the second having him trying to be player alongside a Shrek reference, even done ironically for the memes. He's just woefully out of date. It's honestly trying way too hard to pick up on the formula from First Class, and the flop sweat is the worst possible contrast to how much of a cool player that Jack Harlow is clearly trying to be. It's so much worse than just being phony, it's manufactured. And yes, I know a lot of folks probably saw all this with his 2022 album. I'm just catching up to the sentiments, but even with the obvious industry machinations, there was enough to keep up the veneer on that project, and yeah, that's gone now. Yes, the groove is decent, but man, I had an aggressively negative reaction. This really sucks. So yeah, I'm a little shocked I'm doing this, as I think it's obviously more competent. But coming out of our week, Lovin' on Me by Jack Harlow is getting the worst of the week over the dishonorable mention of Soak City Do It by 310 Baby. I have always said the disappointment's gonna make this worse, and my god, Jack Harlow should fire whoever told him ripping off his same formula was a good idea. Throw them into the fucking sun. Best of the week, not a great week here, so Houdini with Dua Lipa's running away with it. I guess Northern Attitude by Noah Kahan and Hozier's getting the honorable mention on Hozier's performance alone. Next week, oh my god, I'm not looking forward to Lovin' on Me becoming a hit. This could get bad. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. I'll see you next time.